Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, the exponential success coach. And today I have Gina Riley with me. Her career trajectory has been kind of interesting. And these days, I'll let her talk about how she got here, because that's kind of what she does with people, is help them talk about how they got here. So a lot of what she does parallels some of the things that I've been doing, except she does it very specifically for those landing and hoping to land new jobs. How do you communicate that? How do you communicate your career path? How do you, what she calls, unpack your career stories? So Gina, welcome. Let's talk about all this. You talk about personal development and professional development.
Welcome. I do. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I essentially sit at the convergence of experience with doing executive search. I now do career coaching. And I'm also an interview skills trainer in corporate. So I'm using all of that experience to help my coaching clients who are experiencing a career transition.
So a lot of people, one of the reasons I wanted you on the podcast is because pretty much 100% of us are in some form of transition, right? I wrote Dynamic Transitions because it's about transition. We're in some form of transition in relationship, in our careers, in our understanding of spirit, in finance. Like, we're in some form of transition, and career transition is a big deal right now. So what are you seeing as key points? And I would love to do with you what you do with others, which is, how did you get here, right? Like, talk a little bit about that, because I didn't go into depth in your bio. I have it right here. That said, it's always better for me when the guest says, you know what, my life was a messy whirlwind, and here's what it looks like.
All right. I'll take that. I'll take that. So the way I got to where I am and where I landed today is really something that started in high school. I was 16 and I was a part of leadership development programs where a traveling group of motivational speakers came through my high school and brought together a lot of students and taught us about communication skills, relationship skills, how to stand up for ourselves, and just to be our authentic selves in the world. And when you're at that age, you're already having a challenging time communicating with parents, navigating friendships, and all of that. It was a really pivotal time for me. And as I got exposed to these incredible people, I saw that was something that I wanted to do. I wanted other people to feel the way that I felt as I transformed my own self. And so it led me to study communication in college. So organizational, interpersonal, intercultural communication. I ran some of my own leadership programs in college and actually got people to pay for them. My summer jobs were, 10-day camps where, students would come for 10 whole days and learn about these communication and relationship skills. So I was building all those foundational pieces all throughout my, from 16 to 22. Then I had a career in HR. I worked in staffing. I worked for Intel for 10 years. I moved into being an HR business partner after getting a master's degree, and then into training and development. And ultimately, I foresaw myself standing on stages doing motivational speaking. But through life's twists and turns, I ended up taking a lot of time off to raise two sons. And my reentry was back with a former Intel colleague who started an executive search firm 12 years ago. And I have done some executive search for her, but really it was a springboard into helping people through career transition, because I have seen, as an executive search consultant, grown adults ramble their way through interviews and blow it, trying to get executive level jobs. So I'm reverse engineering all that experience. And I created a program to help leaders and executives who are in transition.
That's great. That's great. Prior to recording, you had talked about knowing what the key tool is versus having the Swiss Army knife, right? I could do this and I can do that and I can do this. And what is it you need? And we've all seen that. People who are so desperate that it's like, I can be anything you want me to be. And it's like, that's icky. There's something, creepy about that. What resonated for me, and then I want to turn it back to you. What resonated for me is the idea here of one sharp sword. Is one sharp sword cuts through everything. One sharp sword is all you need, not 1,000 dull knives. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's like one sharp sword cutting through to what matters most. Well, you're saying use that one tool and say, this is who I am and what I do.
Absolutely. And that's what attracted me to your podcast. I was like, yes, that's what I'm talking about, but in my world, for career transition. So I interviewed this brilliant CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, Jennifer Davis, and she talked about showing up in interview situations with your sharp tool and communicating that you know how to use that tool based on what those decision makers need in their organization today. And then let them be pleasantly surprised that you bring with you a lot of other experiences and skills. So that's your Swiss Army knife. And you can say, I've got the knife. I also have the corkscrew, and I've got the can opener. I have these other things. But if you lead with the entire Swiss Army knife, you confuse the listener, and they don't know how to place you in the scenario. They only care about themselves. They care, can you come solve this problem? And they can't afford to get it wrong at the CXO level.
That's great. That's, it's basic marketing. You don't offer too many choices because a confused buyer doesn't buy. So if the buyers are those interviewing you, you come and say, I've got this. It will help you to solve the pain point. And I guess part of that is that the interviewee needs to know what the pain points are.
Absolutely. So, any candidate should be doing their homework, but at the levels that I'm talking about here, senior executives need to be doing many hours of research if they're in those finalist, roles. You need to understand the market. You need to understand the company and the competitors. You need to have researched the key players. Maybe it's the board. What investments are they making? Are they divesting? What are the unique challenges that they're facing? Because you need to be able to speak to that to become the most credible candidate in the pool and persuasive candidate to win the job.
Love that. Unique challenges met by what? Unique selling proposition.
Absolutely.
You need to bring USP.
Yes, it's your unique value proposition. And how will that solve their problems? They need to be convinced of it. And so that takes a lot of research, and it takes a lot of questions, and it takes a lot of listening and not making assumptions until you've built a really good hypothesis.
Key communication skill is listening.
What's that?
One of the key communication skills is listening.
Oh my goodness. Yes. If you're ready to just only talk, that could be a problem.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, maybe someone in our audience is like, my job's fine. It's okay, but it could be better. Maybe I could find a different place. Or maybe even in my own organization, I could find a way to level up. What would you guide them to do first? Like, I'm fine, but I want more, right?
Right. Oh gosh. I could go a lot of different directions with
Pick
this.
one. Pick a sharp tool and
yeah,
let's
but I'm
go.
going to start with this. And I did a LinkedIn post today about this, which is start with you. Start with your story. Start with your unique strengths and what you value, because those are the things that you infuse into your storytelling. That's the foundation. That is the baseline. And that's where I start with all of my clients. It takes 3 to 4 weeks to build up that storytelling so they're ready to download it to a resume writer. So that is the foundation. But you asked a nuanced question. And one of those nuances was, I might be itchy and I would really like to move up. That's different than maybe moving out, you know, and the strategy could be different. However, as of late, I've worked with a couple of people who have had an opportunity to write their own and pitch their own job description. So I was am currently working with 2 mid-career professionals. One wanted to leave the organization. They were ready for a change. We were working together for about 6 months and the organization had a reorg. And now instead of operating in silos, they're going to have a matrixed collaborative organization. And she had the opportunity to up-level, have managers reporting to her instead of just the smaller team. And it gave her opportunities cross-functionally. She's like, well, this sounds pretty good. So I created a lesson for her, if you will, to write her own job description, which required her to research, look at other similar job descriptions of what that could look like, and pitch it to her senior leaders and say, I'm the right person for this role. And it gave her a lot of fuel to get that job. And she got it, by the way. So she's transitioning up right now. Another story, same exact time, I had a gentleman who was looking for an operations leadership role. And so he was targeting externally, found a startup that had been invested in, but they needed an additional executive level leaders. So as he talked to them and found out and researched what they needed, he also wrote his own job description. He has an offer in hand. He's just navigating the negotiation process. And that may or may not work out depending on what they're willing to pay him. And it requires a move. But I've been in positions where I'm helping people move up, but it's all up and out. It's all about positioning and making sure you've got that unique value proposition and the sharp tool first.
It's awesome. I like the idea of writing your own job description. I think 100% of the listening audience, viewing audience, that's an exercise that we could all do. It's one of those things that I'm a big fan of. You know, my background's clinical psych. I took a left turn into leadership development several decades ago. I do speaking, I do coaching, and it's about up-leveling. And it's really about, you know, you talked about know what your values are, and that way you can actually assess what value you bring. If you write your own job description, you're basically saying, this is who I want to become. This is what I want to live into. I think that's a brilliant exercise for everybody. What does your life look like? And what job will you hold that allows you to have that life?
Absolutely. I mean, what a gift to be able to wrap a job around yourself, right?
Yep.
It's pretty incredible.
So when you talk about a unique value proposition, a UVP, or what we used to call a USP, unique selling proposition, it's basically how are you positioning yourself as different from everybody else that's out there, right? How do you propose that people do that? Because, you know, the frame of reference for self is only self. How do I say I'm better than somebody? How do I say this is my unique thing? Like, what would you guide somebody to do to get a perspective beyond themselves? I love this kind of work. I guide people through that. I'm curious about how you do your magic in this area.
My framework and my process. So what I would start with is this. I would worry less about the competition, and I would first focus on what I uniquely bring, because once you get grounded in that, it's undisputable. You can't dispute it because you embody it. So this is my process. I start with a career profile assessment. It's called UMAP, YOUMAP. It can be found at myumap.com, by the way. And I don't get anything for telling people about that. So what it is an assessment that has 4 assessments in one. I get the top 5 strengths from StrengthsFinder. It tells me how people do what they do. What are their natural talents? And it's statistically valid because Gallup StrengthsFinder has been taken by more than 33 million people. Mm-hmm. The second assessment is a values assessment, where my clients will assign their own meaning to their top values. And then we're using the top 3 to be a benchmark against any opportunities that they have and whether or not they can live out their values when they make that job choice. The third assessment is a skills assessment. It has a cross-section of your motivated skills, the things that excite you in your job, and the things that burn you out or demotivate you. And so it's another thing to recognize what we really like to do and try to avoid jobs that we have to do too much of what we don't like to do. And then the fourth assessment is a personality assessment that tells us who we are. And Kristen Cherry, the author of UMAP, uses the Holland. And the reason why I don't use a personality assessment as a standalone, meaning like Myers-Briggs, DISC, Insights, any of those, is it only tells me who someone is. It doesn't give me their natural talents. That's how we do what we do. The values tell me why the person does what they do. The skills tell me what they do. The personality tells me who they are. So we start with this. I do a debrief, 2 hours, and I spend 5 hours creating a summary, a synthesis of integrating their language in it. So they get 1 page on how all of that comes together. And then we do a leadership assessment. And I also build a synthesis around that. I use the adaptive leadership model because it's very economical to use. And then the third step to building the storytelling is to have them download their whole story. We spend 2 hours and they just tell me everything from their education forward. And then with about 10 pages of notes, I'm trying to get that to 6 to 8, and we streamline it. So back to your question, how do we build the unique value proposition? From there, we have these synthesis that then we take it and we say, okay, what are the themes and patterns? What were the pivotal moments in the career? What can I pinpoint that I keep doing again and again? What did I get rewarded for? What did I get jazzed about? Where did I fall short? Where did I have an issue? Right? And so as we build that, we build the tell me about yourself story. It's not quite an elevator pitch. Elevator pitch should be 60, 90 seconds. I don't spend as much time on that. I'm spending it on the 3 to 5 minute narrative. You get in front of me on Zoom and we're going to interview. And I say, tell me a little bit about yourself. I want you to nail that in less than 5 minutes.
Amazing. I love all of that. The having a personal story that integrates how did you get here and highlights skills, that highlights the things that you get jazzed about. It allows you to actually filter for yourself, is this the right job that I'm going for? Right? Yes. Absolutely.
And the first thing that I do when I have a client who is lucky enough to have more than one opportunity at the same time, the first thing I do is I pull out the UMAP and I go right to the values and I say, okay, your top 3 values out of all the values was this. Can you live that out based on your experiences with the people that you've been interviewing with? Will you be able to live out those values? Because if not, that's what's going to keep you up at night. That's what's going to give you a sick stomach. That's what's going to be a problem if you have those values rubbed up against. So we start there.
Good. So good. I do that when I work with organizations and organizational leaders, right? What do you value as humans? What are you saying you value for the organization? How does that show up? How are you modeling that?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people really love Simon Sinek and the start with why. The why are our values.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
what
define them for yourself.
Yeah. What is that? And to recognize that they've changed. You have core values that you're going to keep. This is part of dynamic transitions, right? That you have core values that, love, family, integrity, those things probably won't change over time. And you have peripheral values that do tend to change over kind of lifespan. So in your 20s, you have certain values that, basically are look at me. You have in your 30s, you're looking at stability, in your 40s, and this is very general. In your 40s, you're looking at legacy and how to integrate that stability. In your 50s, you're looking at health and adventure. In your 60s, you're looking back at legacy and health and adventure, feed that as well. You've got family that may be important along the way. So looking at, well, how do I create this life for myself? It's different than, we used to talk about work-life balance, which doesn't exist. There's life, right? And how do you want to live it? So I'm loving everything you're saying, Gina.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You are bigger than the life you are leading. It really is time to attend to that thing you've wanted to do or have, but you've been putting off. It's time to step into that dream you've parked for someday. It's time to claim true well-being, both personally and professionally, without giving up the success that got you here. It's time to check out Dr. Pernell's signature small group retreat, the Exponential Success Summit. Explore exponentialsuccesssummit.com. Seats are extremely limited as this is a very special small group event. www.exponentialsuccesssummit.com.
When you talk about training managers to be more effective interviewers, what do you train them to do? Because I think we can learn lessons from the other side as well.
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm reverse engineering this. It goes both ways, right?
It does.
So with Talents Group, we've developed a 6-hour in-house corporate training. We've done it over Zoom through the pandemic. It's not quite as fun because I like to be in front of the group.
Yeah.
But what we've done is we've taken a mashup of, 4+ training programs over time that we've used. But, the foundation is Dr. Paul Green's behavioral interviewing. What we've done is we've created a way to explain to managers how to craft effective questions that relate to the skills, functional and behavioral, that they need to uncover through the interview process and not use their gut feel and not use, cues or things that will cause biases in that process. So we give some foundational content on biases, listening skills. We do some exercises even on like getting people tuned in to listen. Then we help teach them how to craft effective questions based on the skills that they need to go after for a future job that they're hiring for. Then we have them practice. We do a mock interview. And it is incredible. Like just in 6 hours time, people walk out with a playbook to go and assess talent. And it's about asking the right question tied to the skills that you need, and then listening and then probing for more information when you're not getting what you need. It's a flexible mindset. As long as you know what your goal is for the interview, and you practice these skills, you get better and better. And what I say at the beginning of every single interview training is, you may have to be here today. Your corporation is making you go to training, but I promise you this is a life skill and you will be able to take it with you. If your spouse or partner says, hey, I'm taking you to dinner with a couple people you don't know. Guess what? If you know how to ask effective questions, you can get people talking. And who's the most interesting person in the room? The person asking questions and getting people to talk about themselves.
That's awesome. I'm curious. One of my TEDx's talked about perceptual bias. And so I'm curious how you help people uncover their own personal and perceptual biases, because those are blind spots usually. People don't know. They may know that they're biased, but they may not know that they're demonstrating that bias in the moment.
Absolutely. I will answer this in a couple ways, but let me start with this: is that I'm not a trained, a trainer on biases. Like, that is not my deep sweet spot.
Fair enough.
Right? We cover enough to bring up the fact that we all have unconscious bias. What is it? And what are a few that relate to the interview situations, right? Based on all of the illegal factors like, age discrimination and so on, right? And the perceptions that we bring along with that. In fact, we do a kind of a funny legal quiz just to test people and see what they know. But how do we talk about avoiding having the biases impact our decision-making, which is, if you are interviewing for skills and you can get from a candidate that they are qualified because they can demonstrate through their past experiences they have the skill, then you can avoid some of these biases. But, a lot of times we'll make a judgment call right when someone walks in the room. It takes 250 milliseconds for us to make a snap decision about somebody. That's not much time, right?
No.
But recognizing, I just made a judgment about how someone looks or what they're wearing or their skin color, whatever that is, recognizing it and saying, thank you, brain. I just need to let that go and focus on this person's skills.
How do you manage conversations on both sides about cultural fit? An applicant says, well, I want a great culture. And an interviewer says, I want somebody who's going to be a great fit here. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like, I want them to mush themselves in and I'll have a gut feel about whether they belong. And that's where bias comes up.
Yeah, I have an answer for that, believe it or not.
It's why I asked. I was hoping you would.
So the way we go about it with Talents Group, that's where I consult for the executive search, is instead of actually saying we're looking for a culture fit, we want a fit to our cultural values. So when we're asking the effective questions to uncover skills, we listen for the behaviors. And the behaviors are the underpinning of our values. So we can hear it. Were they angry when they were dealing with that client or customer, or whatever that scenario is? Now, the same goes true in my Gina Riley consulting business with my clients who are in career transition. I'm not finding them jobs, but we look at their top 3 values and we say, great, are those in alignment with that company, whether they're a personal value or whether it's one that would be something that needs to get reciprocated from other people? It just depends on the value.
That's great. It's cool. What are you seeing in terms of quiet quitting, and how people respond to that, which, by the way, I think is a huge misnomer. I don't think quiet quitting is a thing. We used to call it being formally compliant, where people would do their jobs and no more, versus quiet quitting, which is I think it's a misnomer.
I don't have a good answer for it because I'm typically dealing with executives and they're not necessarily quiet quitting. About half of the people I work with have a job and they come to me and say, I need to get ready for a career transition. Help me build that storytelling and get my sharp tool ready, right? The sharp sword. And those people are a lot less incentivized to even hurry along in their process because they have a paycheck. So they're good, but they're not quite quitting. In fact, that's why it takes them a long time is they usually have a family and they have that job and they're a leader. When it comes to the people that are already in transition, they may have experienced a layoff. They may have been out of the workplace for a little bit. The pandemic affected some people's jobs. It's just taking a while. So to answer that question, the short story is I just don't experience the people who are like, yeah, just kind of let it all go.
That's awesome. That's good. And for me, it gets back to values, right? If you're going to be quiet quitting, it means that there's something about the position you're in that isn't good enough for you. So what does light you up? Where do you get that? Are you seeing changes in the workplace broadly where companies are actually considering changing the 40-hour work week or creating hybrid or flexibility was a key term that came up in some of the research that I was doing. What do people really want? They want to be acknowledged for doing great work, and they want flexibility in their jobs. Now, you work with executives mostly, so usually that's like goal-oriented. Let's just get it done. But I'm curious about what you're seeing and
Yeah, I think that some of our leaders do want that human contact again, and they'd like to see people in the office, and they acknowledge that hybrid is probably the way to go. And I also think that this is my opinion, by the way, that I think that a lot of workers want their cake and to eat it too. So they want to be at home with their pajama bottoms on and say they're more efficient at home, but then they complain about not being included and not having a sense of belonging. And I believe that the human interactions and the informal ways that we come together as people are the things that create the belonging in the first place. So I think that we're talking about a lot of the wrong things. And in fact, I just did a Disrupt HR speech in September, and the topic of my Disrupt HR speech was, are we ready for a latchkey workforce? And I have two Gen Z sons, they're 20 and 22 right now. And what I see on the horizon is we have this group of people who've just weathered a pandemic and arguably had the worst of it. I mean, we say that our elderly population, it was terrible for them, in that situation. I think the worst thing for our society is going to be these Gen Zers that my youngest graduated class of 2020 from high school. He graduated sitting in his bedroom, right? No formal prom, no formal graduation, no senior party, right? No normal rites of passage. Off to college, wore a mask all through school, never went to a class in a classroom, and mostly was in one room with one roommate. So where am I going with this? We have a whole group of people who have not developed sharp communication and relationship skills and how to deal and adapt with adults and how to navigate challenging conversations. And a lot of their time is spent doing what? On a screen.
Yeah.
On a screen. So I've had these conversations with my children, their friends, and, on one hand, they also want hybrid too, but we are not building up the next generation of leaders if we're all resistant to being together and we insist that we're going to keep working out of our bedrooms.
I love that.
I get pretty fired up on this topic.
I see. That's the part I love is that you have strong opinions, and I don't disagree. That 4 years ago we were saying, put down the technology and go and meet, and 2.5, 3 years ago we were saying, we can't meet, so pick up the technology so that we can see each other on a screen. And now we're at a place of going, all that screen stuff has really kept us apart, and we don't know the human interaction nuances anymore. Mm-hmm. We better find a way to learn that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Where I'm really seeing such an interesting reaction to what I'm saying is, at first people have a reaction because they feel like personally this is going to affect them. Like, I'm not going to be able to run my kid to preschool or whatever, whatever the thing is. Right. But then I start talking about my own sons and the fact that they haven't been able to go to class and they haven't interacted with adults, even teachers in person, and they are zooming out. Like some of them just checked out. That we're paying for school, but they didn't even show up on Zoom because they couldn't do it anymore. Right. Mm. So here's the one thing that I say to parents is, you expected your children to go to preschool and all the way through high school in person, get them out of the house so I can do my work. But then when they go to college, do you expect them to graduate and spend the whole rest of their lives in their bedroom? Because that's basically what you're saying is your kids are going to go. That's where my kids are at right now. It's like, well, we're not going to go to the office and we will not be there to mentor your kids. I think it's wrong.
Okay. That's fair. So here's the question for you, which is about just our conversation. And that is, are there things that I've left out of asking you? What is it that you like, oh, darn it, if there's one thing, or if there are 3 more things I could offer the audience, it would be this.
Oh my goodness. So primarily I'm speaking to people who are either in a career transition or planning one. So back to what you and I started with, which is get grounded in your career story, create a plan, and know what you offer so you can move forward with confidence. That's really the baseline of what I talk about. We even segued into interview prep as well. All of the things that you get grounded on fuel your career stories, those interview stories, and if you need to practice that with someone, I advise people getting mentors and sponsors to help inform their journey so that you can get honest feedback from people. And the one thing I guess that we didn't touch on that I have as an end cap to my own program, which is a thought leadership component, which is if you're going throughout your career and you get to a place you get stuck and you're expecting someone to just find you, I call it plucking you out of obscurity, then you will come to a place that you will get stuck. How do you not get stuck? You have to be known, liked, and trusted for something. What do you stand for? What do you write about? What do you talk about? What are you known for? And what do people come to you for? So I would say that of all the things that we talked about, that's one thing that we didn't touch on. It's something that I work with people on is, what is it that you're going to stamp down into your ecosystem and put it out there so that you continually generate water cooler conversation around the topics that you want to be known for, even if you're not a super deep expert on any one of those things.
Fantastic. I'm taking notes as you're talking. So get grounded in your career story, create a plan. And that plan could be anything from how are you applying, to whom are you reaching out, to how frequently, to what medium are you using to do the reach out. Practice and step forward with confidence. Getting an outside perspective is going to help. And then back to basic marketing as a thought leader, as a quote unquote influencer. How are you known, liked, and trusted? Known, liked, and trusted is those are the 3 things around any brand. And so basically what you're saying is be your own brand, right?
That's right. And a lot of people start to get nervous. They're thinking, ooh, I have to be flashy. You do not have to be flashy. You can be an introverted deep thinker and still put out great stuff in your ecosystem. It doesn't have to be for everybody. It only has to be for the people in your community professionally.
Yep. That's awesome. Being known, liked, and trusted. I mean, that's your community can be just a few people, which is, what are you known for? And that's going to inform the story that you tell as well. I'm known for this. I'm an expertise here. I'm an expert here. Yeah. That's fantastic. Good deal. You are suggesting that people find you at GinaRileyConsulting.com, and then there's a masterclass that you offer as well. I will have that in the notes. Will you, in the show notes, will you talk a little bit about what the masterclass is that you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a 30-minute video. It's absolutely free. And what it does is it walks you through all the moving parts to a successful career transition. And it comes with a PDF workbook. So people should check their spam folders for that because, that's where it goes typically. But what it does is, not everyone can afford to have a coach. And so this is literally like my way of giving a gift to the world, like for all those people that need to see what that plan could look like. You can start filling in those moving parts for yourself. That's great.
That's great. Okay. And if people wanted to reach you directly, is there something you suggest?
Yeah, actually, like through my website, people can send me messages that way. And then also I would say, you can connect on LinkedIn. Please do a personalized connection request. Let me know that I was heard on this podcast, because that makes it so much easier. We all get a lot of spam on LinkedIn. Take the extra 30 seconds for a personal request. If your headline starts with, I help coaches with their sales funnel, I'm going to go look at your whole profile and see if I'm going to get a sales pitch.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's important for me to have a healthy network. And so I vet every single person, I'm looking.
Good for you. All right. So LinkedIn, is it Gina Riley at LinkedIn?
Yes. Okay. I'm just Gina Riley there. I'm easy to find.
That's great because, LinkedIn gets, there are tons of people out there.
Nothing fancy. I was able to claim my name, Gina Riley. Lucky me. I think it was probably from the early days. I don't know. Yeah. Been around a while.
All right. GinaRiley.
That's
just
right.
So people can find you. And it's GinaRileyConsulting.com as well. I will have all of that in the show notes. Anything else that you were hoping I would ask you or that we didn't cover?
I can't think of anything right now.
Okay. I feel pretty complete with this too. So I just want to say, Gina, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yay. Yeah, yes. All right. Very good. Perfect. So our guest today, Gina Riley, who talked about what it is to be in transition in your career, what you need to be paying attention to, and some of the steps to take to make that transition easier. Again, many thanks to Gina Riley. This is One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I am your host, Dr. Wayne Pernell, the Exponential Success Coach, and we'll see you here next time.